progress.
Hello. Now, by the way, I recommend praying before practicing. I prayed right before starting this video. I want to talk about some of the techniques you can use for gospel piano playing. And let's break down some of what I did just now. So I kept the melody in the top voice. We would call that the soprano. We're most familiar with using the word soprano for a singing voice, but also when we're playing the piano, the top voice, the top note of the harmony we're hearing is called the soprano. Okay? So then I added very frequently, usually on the first beat of the measure, some chords with the soprano note, the melody note on top. Now we'll get to what my left hand was doing shortly. But so what was the right hand doing? How did I know what chords to play, and what chords were those? Well, now some people are great at finding the chords by ear, and for others it's a skill that will come with time. And in fact, if you want me to teach you that, that's another story for another time, just because it's a whole different ball of wax from what we're doing right now. So if you don't know the chords and you're not great yet at picking them up by ear, for now I would say there are plenty of great chord charts online. There are also plenty of not so great chord charts. So I would recommend finding one and playing according to it and seeing if the chords seem right to you. But that's how you'll know, if you don't already know by ear what chords to use, or if you don't already know the song and know what chords to use. But what chord was that? Well, G, B, D. G major chord. It's inverted if we look just at the right hand, because it doesn't have the root on the bottom. The root, or tonic of the chord, is the G. But I'm putting that on the top instead of the bottom, so I can have the melody. Amen. That G note is the melody. Now, when we look at both hands overall, it's actually not inverted. It's actually considered still in root position, meaning the root is on the bottom. The left hand takes care of that. So I said we would get to what the left hand was doing. The left hand was starting on the root to give it that, to put the chord in root position overall and give it that stable feel. When you have the root on the bottom, it feels the most stable. And then you could go, so G is the root, B is the third, and D is the fifth. The lower you get on the piano, probably because the piano has a lot of overtones, and the lower we get, the more of those overtones are within the human range of hearing. The lower you get on the piano, the muddier it'll sound when you have the whole chord. G, B, D, the first, third, and fifth. So the lower you go, the better it is to use octaves, G, G, or fifths, G, D, and fourths. From G to D is a fifth. That's why we call D the fifth of the G major chord. And then D up to the next G is a fourth. So I could go amazing, or I could even go back up to the G. Amazing. So when I put it together, it can sound like that. Notice I ended on the D in the left hand, or I could do that, or sorry, I meant to do the other. There, I could come back up to that G. So 1, 5, 1, 5, and then up to the 1 again in the next octave. If I leave out that last 1, if I don't go, if I just go, then it gives it a more syncopated feel. Syncopation, or being syncopated, basically means starting a longer note in between the beats or in between the strong beats. We're in a 3-beat measure, 3/4 timing. 3 beats and the quarter note gets 1 beat. 3 beats per measure, that is. And the beats are always stronger than in between the beats, naturally. And the first beat of a 3-beat measure, or any measure, is the strongest. So there, if I do that, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and I'm starting that D in the middle of the second beat, technically on the third triplet eighth note, we would call it, and then holding it. I'm starting a longer note in between the beats. If I don't stop with that D, if I come back to the G, then it gives it a more traditional feel by taking away that syncopation. By the way, this may have been the first time I went ahead and played a full chord there. I don't need to, but if I want to, what chord is that? It's still the G major chord, G, B, D. I just have the B on the top and then walk it down to the G. I have the B on top and walk it down to the G in order to stay with the melody in the soprano voice. If you're not playing with a singer, or if the singer needs that support, it's important to play most or all of the melody notes clearly. So that way people know what you're playing and are able to understand, and it's not just a bunch of chords and accompaniment patterns, but it's reminding them of the words. It makes it easier for them to worship. Alright, so there. I'm changing it from a G major to a G7 chord. G, B, D, F. G, B, D, F, but with the B on top. And the left hand could go G, D, G, D, or G, D, F, D, to emphasize that 7. Either way. As long as one voice in the right hand or left hand is playing it. We could even have the right hand playing just the G major chord, but add that F, the 7th of the chord, in the left hand. But it gives us a stronger feel if we have that 7, that F in the right hand. It gives us a stronger feel of the 7 chord pulling us toward, sorry, I may have said it was a 7 chord. I should say 7th chord. 7 chord could mean the chord built on the 7th note of the scale. But yes, this 7th chord, we get a stronger feel of the 7th if we play that whole chord in the right hand, because the right hand is doing this on the first beat of the measure, so we hear it right away. Whereas if we just do it in the left hand, this particular accompaniment pattern we're doing would only get to the F by the second beat. 1 and a 2 and a there. On that 2 beat is the F. Again, we could do it in both hands, or just the right hand. But the more we hear of the 7, that F, the 7th of the G 7th chord, the more it pulls us, because we have that little bit of tension. It's not heard as much like tension, because we hear all these other chord notes with it. But from F to B is a tritone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps. In ancient music, they hated that. They even thought it was demonic, because it had 6 half steps, and 6 is the devil's number. It also divides the octave right in half, and somehow they thought 2 was the devil's number. I'm not sure why. But so then we've got that 7th. Well, even though adding the rest of those chord notes in makes it sound less clashing, it still clashes a little bit, and that sets us up to go from here, F and B, to the E and G. Or better yet, we're doing E and G if you just look at those top 2 voices, and those notes don't clash. They're what's called consonant, where these are dissonant. But really, from F to B, going from F and B to E and C is the most traditional way to resolve it. It's just that we're putting the C on the bottom so we can have that full chord easily, but have the G on top for the melody. So the more we have that, by the way, yes, we can roll the chord if we want. We probably don't want to do that all the time, but we can do it sometimes for variety. Anyway, rolled or unrolled, the more 7th, the more that F we put in it, if we hear that in the right hand and the left hand, then we have that strong pull. That F pulls toward the E that's part of the C major chord, the next chord. Now, like I said, some people naturally have the ability to tell what chord should be at a particular point. For others, it's a learned skill. And yes, I did recommend, if you don't know that skill yet, looking up a chord chart online. But sometimes those 7th chords are left out. They're optional. So sometimes they, like I said, somebody will just say, okay, Amazing Grace, chords, G chord, but when we're going from the first, the 1 chord, the chord built on the first note of the scale, G is on the first note of the G scale, to the 4 chord, the chord built on the 4th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where we're going, to a form of the C chord, and we'll get to what form I used in a moment. Then, guess what? Adding the 7th to that major chord right before that, to the 1 chord, right before you go to the 4 chord, that always creates that pull. It kind of drags people's ears along, making them want to hear what comes next. And it adds more emotion to the song anytime you do that. So even if you have a chord chart that doesn't include the G7 chord, I recommend trying it, just like I did. Alright, so, how sweet. Now, I did the C major chord in the right hand, but I decided to add a B note. It clashes a little bit. If we heard just the B and C together, it would clash a lot. Debatably more than the F and the B. But with the other chord notes being played along with it, it lessens the clashing, and it makes the chord have that emotional pull, kind of like what I talked about before with the G7 chord. Anytime you add a 7th, sorry, it's a G7, I will say G7th chord, but anytime you add a 7th of some sort, there's going to be a little bit of clashing, and if we use it right, it can set us up for the next chord, and it can add emotion. So, what is that? What function does that B note play, and how did I know it could work? Now, I have played an arrangement, a written arrangement of Amazing Grace that used this type of chord there, but even if I hadn't, see, this is a little different than the G7 chord, G7th chord. The F is a whole step down, 2 half steps. There's G, half step, half step. Whole step down from the root in the next octave. I say next octave because that's how it would look if we put it in normal root position. So this time, and I'm including the E, even though the left hand didn't play it, just because the right hand played it, and I want to show you the full chord. C, E, G. If we had the same type of 7th chord as we used with the G, then we would have B flat, because that's from C down a whole step, 2 half steps. But we don't want that. We're using a major 7 chord. Now, of course, either way, the triad, the 3-note chord, is major. But when we say major 7, we don't just mean the triad is major. We mean we add the major 7th, which is just a half step under the octave. That's what that means. So we're probably very rarely going to see that C major 7 chord, C major 7th chord in chord charts. But if you like that impressionistic sound that it gives, I say impressionistic because impressionistic composers like Debussy, or at least he did, and I believe it became characteristic of impressionist composers, liked to use a lot of different kinds of 7th chords, including major 7th chords. So, how sweet, and again, I could just, how sweet I could just let the left hand stop on the 5th of the chord. You know, C is the 1st, E is the 3rd, G is the 5th, B is the major 7. I could just and make it syncopated. Or I could go and in this case, not just for the sake of syncopation, but for the sake of what I like to do here, and I didn't do this every time when I demonstrated, but what I like to do here in the right hand is I like to add that C sharp note. And by the way, if you're using the sustain pedal, besides clearing the pedal, lifting the pedal briefly at the beginning of each new measure, we want to lift it at the beginning of each chord change, and this is so brief, and really I'm only adding this C sharp. We don't really need to think about what chord it is, although we could. We could just say, well, this C sharp, that's only a half step away from the C that's part of the chord, a whole step also away from that B that we've just heard. So we can imagine, even if maybe we don't have the ears to hear it yet, we can imagine that it will clash, because half steps clash and whole steps do to an extent. So what I want to do is I want to hold that G in the left hand and not go back to the B, because that B and the C sharp would clash a little more than maybe I would want it to, or at least than I'm in the mood to have it do right now. But at the same time, I would add that C sharp below the E. The E is the melody note. We can think of it as a chord. We can say C sharp diminished, C sharp, E, G, but the G is down here. Or we can just think of that C sharp is a passing tone. It goes between the C. How sweet. There's the C. There's the C sharp. It goes between that C and that D. By the way, look, when I get here, sound. I'm not playing the full chord anymore with the right hand. Sound. I'm letting the left hand handle that root, just because it's easier to reach. Easier to do that than... I can do that. I'm a trained pianist, but it's just easier, and we already have that G, that root of the chord, so we've got G, B, D, and it leaves room for the left hand to continue that pattern there. Because if I did, then the right hand would be in the way of the left hand. I could do it, but it's just easier. And again, I could go, or I could go back up to the G, or stay on the D. But there's another option. I could even do... I could do an F sharp. It kind of serves as a... You could say a passing tone between that G and that E. We've got G, F sharp, E. Or we could say it's kind of implying the D major chord. You might see a D major chord there on your chord chart. We've got the melody note, the two melody notes D and E. Well, that D, together with the F sharp, that makes the first and third of the D major chord. We just don't have the A. And that's sometimes okay, especially when we just have that chord for a beat. Oops. I do want to use the full chord there in the right hand. That's an inversion, if we look just at the right hand, an inversion of the E minor chord, E, G, B, but with the B on the bottom. But the left hand supplies that root on the bottom, so technically, if we look at both hands together, it's root position again. We use a lot of root position chords when we're playing if we want a feeling of stability. Ah, what chord is that? Well, if we look just at the right hand, that's C sharp diminished with the minor 7 added. We say it's the minor 7 added because it's got that that whole step below the next octave. Since it's a diminished triad with a minor 7 added, classical music calls it a half diminished 7. But modern music, like chord charts, will call it a C sharp minor 7 flat 5. Now it's not really a flat, but it's going down from the sharp to the natural, G sharp to the G natural. We don't play it as the G sharp, but I mean it's replacing the G sharp with the G natural. A half step below, just like a flat brings a note down a half step. But if we look at everything, we could say C sharp half diminished 7 or C sharp minor 7 flat 5, and then put a slash A. That means the bass note is A whether it's part of the chord or not. We could say that, or we could think of the A as part of the chord. We could say, oh, this is an A9 chord. Now, your chord chart might just have it staying on the E minor. That saved a wretch, staying on E minor there, or going back to the G major. That saved a wretch, G major on that note. That's okay. But I like to do it this way because it gives more emotional pull. So if we think of the A, as part of this chord, oh, here's A major, A, C sharp, E. Then there's A 7th, because G is a whole step below A in the next octave. And then, so you might find a chord chart that says to play an A chord there, or an A 7th chord, or, like I'm doing now, we call this an A 9th chord. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. B is the 9th. And then we could now we're going to the D chord, inverted in the right hand, D, F sharp, A, D major chord, but put into root position with the left hand. We could do something like that, with or without the last D. If we add that C, we're going from a D major to a D7 chord, because again, that C is a half step up from D in the next octave. We could even change the bottom note in the left hand, making it inverted overall. We could change that bottom note to that F sharp. That also gives it more pull toward the that G there. We go back to the G chord. I once was lost, or the whole chord. Lost. So G, G7. But now I could add that major 7 to the C chord, or not. No. Okay. Or in order to keep out of the right hand's way while still not using that major 7 if I don't want to use it, I could go now. I could let the right hand leave out the C note, or I could let the left hand play that whole chord, C, E, G, E. And again, I want to add that C sharp there. And I could, like we did before, like I showed you before, I could go to that F sharp. And there are a few different chord configurations you could use there on. No. You could go back to the G chord. You could go use a D7 chord, but have that B on top for the melody. But if so, don't play the A and the B together unless you really want a clash for a moment. Technically, D, F sharp, A, C, E, G, B would be a D 13th chord. But that's really messy and it's hard to play. So sometimes just adding that 13 in without the 9 and the 11. Sometimes chord charts will put that as a 13, and they really just mean the 7th with that 13th added. Again, if you have the A and the B right together, it's going to be a little bit more clashy. So that's Amazing Grace. All right. And that's our lesson in gospel piano today. If you want to get on my mailing list for piano playing tips from a Christian perspective, or if you want to get a free trial lesson online, let me know in the comments. All right. Goodbye. God bless.